Our next speaker is Swati D'souza. She's a consultant with Brookings India. And Brookings India, if I'm not mistaken, is not a very old...
It's about 5 years in India.
5 years, yes. I think you're a very inspiring leader.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, my esteemed panelists. I don't have numbers because I think we have a lot of numbers out there on natural gas demand and supply. What I have managed to do is give an idea of this echo. Thanks. I think before we talk about numbers, it becomes imperative to look at policy frameworks and how do we enable whatever demand or supply is going to come into the system, how do we actually enable this via having the right frameworks in place. This is a comparison of 3 IES scenarios, 2 TERI scenarios, 1 BP 2040 outlook. Today the share of natural gas, as we all know, is about 7% in the total energy mix. Barring the sustainable development scenario, in almost every other scenario, the share of natural gas in the total energy mix, even in 2040, does not go beyond 8%. It actually is between 6 and 8%. The sustainable development scenario is the only scenario where it goes to about 16% of the total energy mix in 2040. But the volume of gas is increasing from about 48 MTOE right now to about 145 to 170, depending on which scenarios you want to choose. This is something that we're all aware of. So I'm going to skip this slide and go to this slide on where is demand going to come from. The latest amendment, the Electricity Amendment Act that has come about, does not have any changes on gas as a peaker. This becomes very important for the gas, for using gas in the power sector, because without revamping your existing contracts and revamping tariffs, there is going to be very little utility or increase of gas in the power sector, and the problems that we've been seeing for the last 10 years will continue, with about 14 or 15 gigawatts of plants continuing to be stranded. Fertilizer demand, by the way, a lot of these numbers are out there. It's not as if I have looked at these numbers, I'm just giving you a context. So the fertilizer demand approximately could go up to 23 BCM with 30% urea, the cost of urea covering only 30% of the cost of supply of natural gas, 70% coming in from government subsidies. City gas distribution network has the potential to increase given the policy push on different, via the different rounds, via a lot of the policies that have come into the sector. LNG in transport is a potential area of growth. Coal to gas switch in industries is also a potential area of growth, depending on certain challenges. What I actually want to put forth is, if we today Today, the fertilizer sector consumes about 45% of domestic gas. The rest of it is imported. Our fertilizer demand is expected to go up to about 35 million tons urea equivalent by 2030, which means that the amount of LNG in the system, if all the domestic gas comes to the CGD network, is going to keep increasing, which means the government subsidy burden is also going to increase. While the gas pooling mechanism currently has shifted some of this, or rather has distributed the pain amongst all the fertilizer players, is this a viable system to continue as we move forward? The city gas distribution network, yes, there are a number of projections, and there is quite a bit of optimism even within the sector that we will see a lot of growth. These are just some numbers. For 10,000, in the last, say, about 8 years, the CAGR in terms of having CNG stations has been 11%. If we need to go to 10,000, we need about 18. We need a growth of 18% year on year. Pipeline capacity trunk lines has been going on about 1,000 kilometers per year, at least in the last 4 years. This will require at least a 5x increase if we have to meet the target given by PNGRB within all of these. One of the speakers had actually made the point on RLNG being consumed in the city gas distribution sector. Is city gas demand inelastic to begin with? Today, we do see a lot of demand because most of the gas, or there is a policy in place that says that all the gas, that domestic gas should be given. What if it goes up to 35 BCM as we move forward? What if domestic supply does not match this demand? Will we still see demand continuing to grow in the manner that we expect it to grow? How do we then compete with LPG, which may become cheaper, or for that matter, solar induction cook stoves, which, given the entire perspective behind Saubhagya, has had, there are shifts that we are seeing. None of this is actually to put a dampener or a downer on the sector. I'm just giving a macro perspective on the sector. I believe that there are ways to do this. One way is pricing. Yes, we all know pricing is a problem, but how do we actually, from an economic point of view, how do we make gas viable? By pricing it as compared to its substitutes. When we are looking at coal, when we are looking at LPG, how do we eventually make that possible? There are two options over here. One is a carbon pricing framework. The other option is taxes. There has been a lot of conversation about including natural gas within the GST, but even before that happens, and that is a more likely possibility for it to happen, the other aspect is carbon pricing. As per the Paris Agreement, by 2020 or by 2021, once the NDCs start kicking in, India under Article 6 will have to come up with a carbon pricing framework. So can we not start even thinking in that direction, and therefore how gas can be priced vis-a-vis its substitutes for it to become more competitive as we go forward? These are some of the issues that we are actually looking at Brookings, which is why I don't have any numbers, because we are doing this study right now. But I thought I'll put this out. Thank you very much.